everyone, and welcome back to Wicked Art. It's Wicked here, and today I had a little request for a lesson on how to draw action poses from imagination. Now, the key thing, though, is I think a lot of people try to come in and what they think of drawing from imagination is, straight out of my head, no reference, of how to do something. The problem is you have to have a basic foundation, right? So if I came in here and just tried, and I had no experience like studying anatomy and things like that, and I try to draw, an action pose, sometimes, we tend to do things where, if I start drawing a fist, it tends to come out very, the foreshortening's wrong. Um, we get our head in place, and then just everything starts looking like this, right? Like how, this is how I used to draw when I was 5. Everything just starts looking, weird and just starts looking like this. And I think what a lot of people are asking when they ask like how to draw from imagination is how to do it without looking at anything. I don't think that they want to know, well, how do you make that up out of your head as far as, um, having, like, how did you draw that picture without looking at anything? Well, the key to that is 50% of it, some people might say it more, but me personally, half of it comes from memorization. So the key thing to action poses is you have to know, or just any pose in general, drawing a character, you have to know anatomy. You just have to. So look up references of people, fight scenes from a martial arts movie, whatever, and draw those. Break down. But the key thing is, a lot of people think you have to know anatomy and say, oh, you got to know how this muscle works. I say, to an extent, that's true. But me, I feel like you have to know shapes. Okay, you have to know what shapes make up. So just look up action poses or just people in general and draw the shapes that make up their body. Once you do that, then you can start creating things out of memory, not imagination. Imagination part comes from the character you're trying to make. So for example, what we're going to do today is I'm going to draw some action poses. And since we're going for imagination, I'm not going to use a character that exists. I'm going to use my own character from my comic book. Her name is Rena, from my graphic novel. Okay, but we're going to do things first. So for action posing, it's real good to just be loose. Okay, so just let your lines flow. Action lines are, like drawing a straight line for the spine, but just all of your, just don't really pick up the pencil. Okay, so like we know the head is a circular shape, right? We know that we want to split our head up to have lines for where the center of our face is and stuff like that. Okay, but again, you cannot get to this stage, and I know some of y'all may not want to hear that, but you have to learn from real life first. So really look up some pictures and try to break down the shapes. And I'm going to show you how I do that here from imagination using what I've learned from breaking down shapes, okay? So like she's a female, okay? So I'm just going to real loosely come in here and break down the shape of her body, okay? I'm going to really think about where things would be, like the way that, when the back is arched, how much it comes out and rounds down. Okay, so the first step, I guess if you wanted to call it something, would be loose action-based line work, right? So right now I have her upper chest area drawn. Okay, I can go from that point there and I can think about, well, how is the body? What shape does the body go in for the abdomen? Okay, so it kind of makes this shape here. I didn't go in there and draw every little ab muscle in detail. It is good to know where they are placed, but you don't have to study that. You can just get away with just studying the shapes, okay? Different things and putting in different line works, like where the center of the stomach is. You can do that instead of drawing abs, and just have that built in there. Okay, so again, things like the arms, right? What shape does the arm make without putting muscle in it? What shape does it make? Well, it's essentially just a cylinder, right? So I can just draw me a cylinder coming out, staying loose and sketchy, right? And then because my elbow is going to be bent, it's going to be a little bit bigger. Okay, so I have that in there. And again, the forearm is a cylinder shape. It might get a little thinner at the top, but it's just a cylinder shape. There's nothing to it more than that. And then for our hands, I usually just use blocks. We can go in and add individual excuse me, fingers later, and then little things like if my head's tucked down like this, my shoulder's probably going to pass in front a little bit. Maybe leave a little vague line for, where her chest is going to be at. And then same thing with the body. Like, what makes up the pelvic region on a person, right? So usually what I like to think of it is like somebody who's wearing underwear. Okay? So I can just draw a vague underwear shape because that's the shape that's made up in that section. Okay? So again, studying anatomy and the shapes that make it up will get you there. Okay, now when you want to draw super detailed pictures, then yes, then you need to know how muscles connect or whatever. But if you're just trying to draw a cartoon and things like that, you don't always need that in order to succeed. So I'm going to move down to the thighs, right? And we're going to go for more of a cylinder shape here too. Okay, so it's going to get wider as it's coming towards me because the knee is facing me, which means the leg is sitting up higher. Okay, and see how I'm still staying loose because these lines will help give it a sense of motion. All right, the same thing with my knee. I can just draw in a knee shape here. And now I have my knee there. Now we're going to do like a dramatic bend, right? So I can come in here and kind of shorten this some. And you don't have to erase, but just so you can see what I'm talking about. See how it causes more of a bend if I spring it in more. Okay, so next thing I want to do is draw the other shape of the thigh going behind the leg because she's going to be stretching out. And we can leave that there. We can come back to areas like this on the shoulders. We know it's going to come out this way and be a circle. Break down the shoulder that way. Okay, we'll see a slight bit of the cylinder here as it fades to the back. So again, I'm drawing this from my head without any reference because I know how the shapes work. Okay, because I've studied action scenes from movies and things like that, watched enough anime to know that it shouldn't be super stiff. You've got to be loose with it, okay? And the same thing with the forearm. I'm just going to stretch that out, and then that goes out into the hand as well. Right here. Okay? So I got me a good little action pose. Going here, we want to get things like the calf, right? It's going to start out as a cylinder as well, but then just kind of stretch it back where that goes. For the actual like calf muscle itself, it goes back behind the knee when it bends, right? And then a simple little foot shape, right? Again, the foot shape is just a simple shape like we did with the hands. And then for the back part of this leg, because it's kind of bent and they're running away, or it's more of like a leap off the ground type deal, you could draw the foot coming behind right here, and that's really all you need for that. You don't need anything else. Okay, so let's try it again. So again, from learning different things, looking at different camera view angles and things like that from these anime or just action poses, again, I just want to come in here and stay nice and loose. I want to make sure that I am just vaguely getting a sense of the shape of the head. Okay, you don't have to make it perfect yet because you are just trying to bring it to life with a pose, right? So like let's think about things like the neck, right? It's just a cylinder. It's nothing fancy. It's just a cylinder shape, right? So now it looks like I have myself a nice little head here with a cylinder shape. Okay, so right here. Then we want to start thinking again about body shapes, right? So looking at enough poses and things like that of where it would be from the side, you can then go in and break down the shape of the chest area, right? Just that upper body. And knowing how it curves down, that's the shape that I'm using to break it down. Now I know like in some of my other videos, like some of the time lapses, you don't see me doing all this. And that's just because I've done it long enough that I know exactly how things are going to look. But if you're somebody who's just starting out and you're serious about art and you want to get better at it, you have to put these things into practice. You're going to be drawing shapes until you don't need to see shapes anymore. Your lines will do the talking for you. All right, so again, I know I'm going to have a shoulder right in here. Okay, I know that's going to break down into a cylinder shape again, which kind of, at an angle with this, right? And then another cylinder shape for the forearm, right? A little bit, just like kind of like the calf, a little bit wider at the top, skinnier down at the bottom. Is it a perfect forearm shape? No, but it will help you get started, okay? So we know, again, down here in the body that we want to get a exaggerated bend in the spine, right? So the body for like a male, the rear, I guess you'd say the buttocks. I'm not sure which one you want to hear, but that's curves more at the end on a female than it does on a male. So we want to exaggerate that bend, right? But I can go from there and know that these two shapes now break down my body. I can come back over here to my hand. You can see I'm just kind of all over the place. That's fine. Just how you want to draw. If you want to draw one step at a time, that's perfectly cool. But we just want to break it down first, okay? So think of this like step one is doing all that. Okay, so again, I want to draw like this person is wearing, that Rena is just in her underwear, so that I can get those shapes. Okay, and how much of that backside would I see on that character, right? So I'm going to see a split in the buttocks there, right? And then I'm going to go and break down the shape again. Like I said, everybody just wants to go straight to doing this and trying to draw fingers, and they all just end up looking like that. Don't draw with lines yet. Draw with shapes. Shapes are the foundations to all of this, right? So like right here, I could see the neck didn't really look like it was connecting to the body, so I can just add that curve in there. You'll start to see these things, but drawing from imagination itself, it's really drawing from memory, okay? So think about it. Think about it. Some of you may have been like, "Oh, well, I draw, Goku all the time," but think about Goku and the shape of his arms, and the way that the biceps are kind of like a bean shape, and I'm just drawing another cylinder for this thigh here, okay? Right? And then like, how am I standing? So we're turned and we're facing this way, right? But we have this major lean in the body here. So that means my arms are probably going to end up back this way, right? And just broken down a cylinder from there, and then maybe the hand comes out and she's holding whatever. It could be her gun blade. It could be, yes, Serena has a gun blade. But maybe your character has a sword, whatever the stance is, you really just need to focus on shape. I think everybody just really wants to skip to the end where you have mastered something, and that's not how it works, okay? In order to draw from imagination, you have to have a foundation and anatomy of some kind, okay? So like little things like seeing if the legs look a little too skinny, I'm just loosely going back up and thickening these things, you know, like putting a kneecap in here and then coming down and bringing the calf out more. Don't worry about all that stuff being finalized. That's why you draw light and sketchy, because you can get those things out that way. Okay, same thing here. I can come out here and kind of draw a kneecap shape, and then we want that little bit of a bend in the knee. Okay, and that comes down into the legs that way, right? So if I was choosing, character poses, like these are like what I would consider a minute um, form of action. So like there's some turns, there's some bends to it, but it's not really what I would go for, okay? Because you have what I like to call action poses that are like this, where they're just kind of like, yeah, cool, I'm looking up at this person, like maybe this is a bottom view, so we would see more of the bottom of the chin here, right, into the head. But maybe you want to go for a really dynamic action pose. These are the first steps, okay? These are the first steps in drawing from imagination, is breaking these shapes down, all right? So step 2 is going to be, well, how do I draw from imagination? Well, once you've mastered this of how I draw from imagination, the next thing you can do is that's when you don't have to use so much construction line work, because you know where your shapes and lines are going to go, right? So I would say practice this first, okay? So for your homework, and you can come back to this video again to remember what the next stage was. But for your homework, practice this, breaking down the body. Start off first by looking at a reference and breaking it down this way, and then see if you can replicate it without looking at anything, okay? And once you've mastered this, you're going to move on to step 2, which is line work, okay? So line work will kind of prevent you from having to go back and erase all this stuff, right? Once you kind of get the feel of how everything's going to look. So if I wanted to come in here and, draw Arena doing like a dynamic pose, right? So I'm going to go and get the vague outline of the shape of her shoulder, right? So I would just start there. I know after studying enough, again with the arms, a basic shape. And yes, she's pretty fit, girl, so she's going to have a little bit of shape to her arm. Now, you could easily do, like if your character is more stylized, like let's take a cartoon, for instance, like Gumball or Gravity Falls. They're just straight lined arms. That's different. That's a different style. If you're going for me where you want a little bit more realism and some muscle work to it, like I know there's going to be a little bit of elbow there, right? Again, I know my forearm is going to come down, and see how I'm still kind of sketching it. I'm just not rounding the shapes, okay? So again, practice this first, and then you'll start memorizing these things, these outlines of the body that makes things up, okay? Again, if you're serious about art, you'll put in the work in order to get to this stage, okay? So again, I'm just going to come down with my forearm here, okay? And I would do, like a basic shape outline of the hand. Now, usually what I like to do is start with the thumb here, okay? Now, she does usually, when she's fighting, she has like a power gauntlet, because it's kind of like a steampunk fantasy sci-fi type story. So she would have, probably those on. I'm just not going to have the time to draw all that detail in there. But yeah, and I'm just going to come in and draw out the shapes of my fingers in here. Now the level of detail that you want, all that stuff. So like, see, even here I make mistakes still. So like that's just too thick. So I'm just going to cut it down some. I'm still going to round it, but I'm just going to cut it down some. So that's there, all right? So once you have this, you know, kind of established, right? You got your 3 fingers, we need another one coming in here. You have to start thinking about things like where I'm gonna see how much of what finger, right? So you might see a little bend in the finger there, and a slight bit of the pinky bent there, okay? And then, you know, thinking about, okay, well, the way she's landing, kind of think of it like almost like a Spider-Man type pose, like she just jumped off a high place. I'm going to start doing things like shaping the chest. And how that's going to look with the pose that she's taking. Okay. So again, I'm doing this without the use of construction lines because I practice this. You're going to hear me keep pointing back to this, y'all. Because I practice this enough, I can see those shapes in my head as I'm drawing this line. I know the full shape goes like this, but I know I can just stop here and get away with it, right? Again, so since my head is down, we're going to kind of be landing in that Spider-Man pose, right? I got to think about like how much of, because she's going to have her outfit on, all right? So that'll be kind of like where the collar starts to split out, but like how much of the face is going to be exposed, right? I know the relative shape of a face enough that I can come in here and draw the shapes that I need for the lips. You know, what portion of where my cheek's going to be at. And just different things like that. Just where the nose is going to end up being placed, right? And just changing up the things that you need to change. To make sure that they get right. Okay? So like even for me personally, the one thing that I still do construction lines on, and there are people who can draw heads without doing it. And it just depends for me. Like if I'm doing a close-up of the head without the body, usually I can just do that and just draw that in. But for me personally, okay, I still construct the head. Okay, especially for these action shots, I still construct where everything is going to be at. Just so I can get an understanding of what I want to draw, right? So like I know from here, this is coming up underneath the chin now, so now I can come out here and draw that collar coming out. Okay, and she has different outfits too, so it wouldn't always be like this one. I'm just drawing her basic form. But you gotta think the way that they're bending too, right? See how this all looks the way it does? I probably want to increase the size of the head, but again, I know how much of the back. So if I was to draw the whole shape, I now know that I can just come from here and take it back to the collar right here to see that much of her back. Okay. So yeah, we're going to fix that head. That's definitely too small, but that's why I like to still do that, because you don't want to end up shrinking things down. So there are some points still that, yes, I use construction lines for. Again, just the way that her spine would be shaped from the neck, right? So if I was to draw that whole thing out, I would know that we would also see a portion of her rear come out, okay? Maybe not so wide, but it would come out a little bit that way, right? And as that curves in, I now know, again, the shapes that I would use to build a thigh. I'm just utilizing the curves of those shapes that I would use. Okay. I also know that this underside area, we would see part of the pelvic region. Okay, same thing down here. How much is she bent over and touching what parts of the leg? And I can just make the shape. Okay, so you can see now we're getting our pose to go back. You know, we have the calf here. Okay, and we have that come down. We have she has boots on. So again, knowing the shape, kind of like this, of an essential shape of a shoe or boot, we can stretch that without any detail right now. And form our leg shape that way. So again, I'm going to be making adjustments to the head, but this is essentially what I got, right? So other things that I want to do is this front part of the knee. We're going to have this kind of a tuck under from that leg, and then I'm going to partially see, if you always draw through with these shapes, right? Like if I was to draw that through, I would know that foot's going back there. So if you, once you get used to that, again, you won't have to see, but you can imagine that it goes back behind, and that I would see part of the boot right here coming out the bottom. Okay. So what I can do now is I can come in here on the face. I know where my center line's going to be at. I know that I want my nose right here, and I'll be doing a video on noses and eyes, but since we're not like focused on our face, we don't have to put that much detail in there in order to get our message across as to what it is we're drawing. So now that I have my nose in place, usually that's when, not all the time, but usually that's when I'll go ahead and I'll get rid of that that center line there, and then it, just depending on how much you want with your style of what you're doing, and I'm just trying out different looks. For my nose, I'll probably just have the nostrils here and a curve out. Okay, and then I would have my eyebrows. And this is where those adjustments to the head are going to start coming in. Okay, I know my character is kind of looking down, so I don't need to draw necessarily the whole shape of the eye. I can just give the illusion that it's there. Let me clean up this area a little bit. Right? And then right in here, we can kind of do the same and just have the eyes come down. And then from here, I can tell the cheek's probably just a little bit too wide. So I could bring that down some, like that. And then I know over here is where my ear is going to be. So we can go ahead and draw that in place. Alright, so now that I have a baseline, this would be all the way to what you would consider. So like, I'm going to come back here and let's think about the arm. Okay, so we want this to kind of come out, and we'll shrink this back this way. And just add in a few extra lines here for. Okay, now I don't want to go into like details, but I know like back here behind the head, I'm going to have my arm go back, right? So if my shoulder's here and it's reaching back, again, I know that it's going to go through the head this way and be a hand coming back here. Now I'm just drawing into my other sketch, that's fine. Okay, so if you can at least get to this stage right here where you just kind of have an outline for everything, think of that as step 2, as just drawing the shapes without drawing through. So the outlines of the body. Okay, and then that in turn will lead you to step 3, which is details. Now, you want to do research. What's the genre you're going for? Are they ninjas? Is it high fantasy? Is it steampunk? So like Rina's a steampunk character, so I kind of looked up Victorian era clothes. So now I know with the way that they're shaped exactly how to draw them. So now, without again looking at anything, I can come in here and draw the boot, right? I know I'm going to have a little bit of it come down here for the sole of the boot itself. Okay, I know that I wanted her to have strap overs. So we kind of have this here, and then I simply just take it and give it an edge like this. And she just has straps there in her boots, right? Now, again, final result wise, when this is done, I would obviously make adjustments and refinements, but that stage comes last for me. And usually I do that digitally and not on the page, just so there's not so much erasing. But again, she has a pair of gloves on, because she handles a lot of tools and weapons, so she doesn't want to cut or burn her hands. So that's simple. I can make a pair of gloves for her. And then up here, she has her jacket sleeve rolled up. So this is, like I said, this is the refinement / detailing stage. And again, how you learn how to do this without looking at anything is by studying and looking up references. What is the era, genre, whatever it is you're going for, what are you doing to perfect that? Okay. Now down here on her leg, I have this strap where she carries various tools and ammo rounds for her gun blade. Right? So just something as simple as joining the compartments that way. You know, they'll have little pouches for her to open on it, but that's just wrapped around her leg that way. She wears goggles on her head. It wouldn't be steampunk without them. So you come in, and again, I'm not drawing this to perfection. I'm just trying to show you my steps on how to go through it. Okay. So again, the reason why I draw the goggles first is so I know where to put the band on the head. So see, now I can stretch this across. And again, you might be wondering, well, that's what I want to know. How did you know how to draw those goggles? Well, again, sounding like a broken record, I know how to draw those goggles because I looked up goggles and studied them and looked at them from different angles. Like, these aren't the world's best goggles. Like, if you really wanted me to really just break down and show you these goggles and what they would look like, you know, they'd have this nice round shape and then come down, and that would be the actual goggle part, which then leads over. And I've drawn them enough that I know the shape that I want. Essentially, those would be my goggles, just drawing them that way. Okay. Like I said, I would put more detail in this picture, but I'm sure you guys don't want to sit here and hang out for 2 hours figuring out how to draw that. Okay, so she has these little hair pieces that come down from the goggles. Okay, again, this is not a one-for-one what she looks like, just because I want to save on some time for you guys, so you're not sitting here watching me draw her. Maybe in another video, if you'd like to, I can show you like a time lapse of me or a full real-time video of me drawing Rena, so you can see what she actually looks like. Okay, and then for her hair, she has it braided back, and then with kind of like a fro going back. And then what I do is I just put these where it's braided back in a row, going back behind her head like that. And then we would finish seeing her hand back this way. 1, 2, 3. Into a thumb. Going back. Like maybe I'd have her holding her gun blade or doing whatever. And then I would spend the rest of my time coming in and refining things. Now she has a coat. It comes out this way. So again, I can draw that knowing that there would be like a slight draping down below the leg, right? And there's no strap on this one. These are just like a khaki cargo type pants. And then that's how like I said, I would draw from imagination and action poses. Is again, let's review. You want to study anatomy, you have to break down the shapes. Just look up pictures of different poses of people and break down the shape, and I mean really break them down. Don't just come in here and try to draw the whole outline of the body. Break it down. Like even in this area, like when you're drawing a head, right? If I take a head and I draw it in, okay, and I set everything up, and this is going to be really loose, but just so you can get the general idea. So I set up my head, and here, I might have made that chin a little bit too long. Okay, so I got me a head, and I have a neck, and then you're like, well, oh man, I can't get the, general collarbone reason. Well, remember, like, you can come in here and break down the shape that makes up that area before the chest, right? Then you can come in here and build up the other area that would make the body up, right? See how I just drew that quickly and just breaking it down? Is it 100% accurate? No, it took like, what, 15 seconds? But obviously, if I took my time a little bit more and did it, but you're getting the point, okay? So Rena here, I would definitely change her face and probably shrink it up this way more, but again, for time purposes, that's not what we're doing. But I hope you have a better understanding now that start with shapes, understand shapes, study anatomy and references. Anything you're trying to draw separately, study it. Break it down by shapes, looking at the picture, and then move the pictures aside. Okay? Don't use them and see if you can replicate. If it doesn't look right, guess what? You need to go back, try it again. Okay? Try it again. Try it again. You have to practice. There is no surefire, hey, I'm going to watch this one video and I will master art. If you truly love it, you're truly passionate about it and want to get better with it, you'll do the homework. So I would suggest this first. Look at references, break the body down by shapes, okay? Then use no references and try to draw the body and shapes down, okay? Once you've mastered this, then try to see if you can draw things without doing the entirety of construction lines and go in and add details, okay? Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope you learned something and understand where I'm coming from with what I was saying. Thank you so much for the request on something for me to give a lesson on today. I really appreciate that. Thank you to we are up to 221 subscribers, so if you like what you're seeing and you want to join the community and learn how to draw and get better, please like and subscribe. And it'll be really helpful if you leave a comment and let me know what you want to learn how to do. It can be realism, it can be cartoons, whatever. Just leave me a comment so I can tell you yes, that I would love to make a video on that, okay? But until next time, keep on sketching, do that homework. You'll get better, I promise, all right? And I will see you in the next one, all right? Bye.